Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wilson Center. Also welcome to those of you who are joining us online. We appreciate everyone being with us on a Monday morning. So, the Wilson Center, for those of you who are new to us, was founded as a living memorial to Woodrow Wilson. We are therefore congressionally chartered, scholarship-based, and fiercely nonpartisan. The Global Europe program is hosting this discussion today with Latvia's former president Zatlers. This is part of an ongoing series of negotiations on NATO's role on its eastern flank. Over the summer, before the NATO summit, we had a very vibrant discussion of Canada's contribution to multilateral NATO brigade in Latvia, and we were thrilled to have Latvia's ambassador. Thank you very much, Embassy Latvia. And that was part of the discussion that we had today. And we will continue that conversation today with President Zatlers. To remind you, President Zatlers was elected and served from 2007 to 2011. After his presidency, from 2011 to 2014, he was a member of the Parliament of Latvia and chairman of the National Security Committee. Prior to entering politics, he was a traumatologist and orthopedist and later chaired the board of the State Hospital of Traumatology and Orthopedics. And as a medical service officer, he worked at Chernobyl following the nuclear reactor accident in 1986. We are very honored to have you with us today. I would like to just extend our thanks to the Center for Geopolitics Studies in Riga, who helped to facilitate today's event. And thank you to them for making this possible. With that, I am going to turn it over to President Zatlers to talk a little bit about three comparisons that he'd like to make and share with us. And then we will have what I hope is a robust discussion. So be thinking of your questions. And one reminder that as a former diplomat, I can, of course, talk forever without even appearing to breathe. But it is much more fun if you have questions that you want to ask, so please be thinking of those. And with that, President Zatlers, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. And okay, you set some rules, robust discussion, and I add some rules for myself too, You can interrupt me at any time you want to ask questions. Don't wait till the question-answer session, and I'll be able to answer you immediately. So I'm a person who have lived in the communist system for half of my life, and who have lived in half of my life in a democratic world, in a democratic country. So I have the right to compare. And this is based on my own experience, meeting people, as an orthopedic surgeon, as a politician, as a president, whatever, just a person. What are the main comparisons we should pay attention today? If you look at today's situation in Europe, also globally, the situation with Ukraine-Russian war. The first comparison is Soviet time Russia and today's Russia. Is it the same? I'm not talking about the Tsarist Russia. It's a big difference. We have to understand it's a big, big difference, because the Soviet Union was more or less based on communist ideology and based on peace ideology. Nevertheless, they had nuclear arms, they had this very strong army, and they paid a lot of attention to military might. In schools, the children were taught that all people are equal, that the peace is the most important thing in the world, and we were taught that we should struggle for the peace in every country, in every place on this planet. And peace and free labor is the cornerstones of this communist ideology. It's strange. There are some good things in the communist ideology too, not only the bad things. The economy was the worst thing, But basically, when we look how the Soviet Union or the Soviet Russia prepared the young generations, they're preparing that for peace. I was told the same thing. I was attending my school, and I really learned that peace is a very important thing. Today's Russia is absolutely opposite. Today's Russia is a military power with military ideology. And even many years ago, it would take, let's say about 15 years ago, maybe less, maybe 10, 12 years ago, since Munich speech, which was an important point that we underestimated what Putin said in Munich. We just said, oh, this rhetorics. No, they were not a place for rhetorics. That was his message. We didn't hear, or we hear, but we didn't understand. That means, you know, as a president, I'm the only Latvian president in the whole history of more 100 years of Latvian state who visited Moscow on official visit. So I'm not a Russophobe, but I am a very big patriot of my country and the Western values. And therefore, to prepare this to be a success story, because it was a window of opportunity. Window opened, I made this visit, we did a lot of good things, and the window closed. And when I asked one of the high-ranking Russian diplomats that I understood that this is window opportunity, took this opportunity. Why did you shut the window? Because it was not the Western side who shut the window. It was the Russian side who shut the window. And his answer is a very nice one. We diplomats, are equally paid for opening and shutting the windows. And that's absolutely right. But I was watching every month for about 3-4 hours, recorded all the statements of Russian officials, high officials, trying to understand what they are going on to do, what goals do they have. And the people say, oh, that's media. No, it's not media in the United States. Russian media is government-controlled. They send definite messages to their population. It's the best open source of intelligence. That's true. So, but what I saw on these TV shows, I'm fluent in Russian, so they can't cheat me anyhow, you know. I saw the preparation for war, because the war were on TV shows, on the TV serials, you know, news, on the way how they describe the international affairs. I said, they are preparing for the war. Politicians, my colleagues, looked at me and said, you are crazy. It's not going to happen. It's going on. They are preparing the population to war. And it happened. And today we have a country which is based on only one ideology, militarism, military might, on war. They cannot exist without war, because the war economy cannot exist without war. And they will need war all the time. The biggest threat to Russia and Russian economy is if the war is over. The next day, the economy will collapse. Because it's much easier to transform the peaceful economy into a wartime economy than vice versa. What's the problem? They have a military or war social contract. And what I mean by that, you know, the best well-paid jobs are military jobs. The best paid jobs in industry are in military industry. That means if you want to get a guaranteed salary and you will not be afraid of being out of job, is military industry. So people support this military policies. And this is not going to change in one day, because they cannot create alternative. So, ending with this comparison, Soviet Union Russia was a peaceful one. Today's Russia is an aggressive one, and with no signs that they are going to change. Corresponding comparison is the Cold War period and today's situation. In a Cold War period, and people say that was bad. If compared today, it was not so bad, because it was controlled confrontation in a bipolar world. We have to acknowledge that after the Second World War till the Cuban crisis, it was uncontrolled. then these two superpowers, Soviet Union and US, established telephone line. In those days it was very important. It was also a symbol that we are entering in a new system of world order. And there were two words which were very characteristic: deterrent, so calling de-escalation, and the second one was parity. That no one of these two bipolar superpowers tried to dominate. Okay, there was a competition, but it was all the time on the parity. And that keeps the control system of this confrontation. Very nasty confrontation, but controlled confrontation. When this bipolar world disappeared, we were so happy, you know. No more Cold War, you know. Nice future. End of the future, somebody said even. End of the history. But basically, it turned out that it's not working globally. And we have to come to the situation that we have multipolar world. Many politicians all over the world said that's a good thing. But basically, we have entered also the era of uncontrolled multipolar confrontation, which is much, much worse than controlled bipolar confrontation. So the world today is much more complicated. The security issue is much more complicated than it was during the Cold War and during the Soviet Union. The third thing, which is a little bit challenging, and I'm playing a little bit devil's advocate, comparison of Afghan war, that means Soviet Union invading Afghanistan, and Russia invading Ukraine today. If you look on the Russian side, you know, the only difference is scale. In Afghanistan, they had, 85,000 troops, not more. Now they have 500,000 at least. It's a big difference, but the goals are the same. They want to take the, let's say, economic benefits. In those times, the Russians wanted to go directly through Iran to the Indian Ocean. Today, they have the same thing. They want to control the Black Sea and get all the human and natural resources and, let's say, all the other resources of Ukraine. Destructive. They don't care about people's lives. They don't care about, their own soldier lives. And what's most interesting, they were kidnapping children in Afghanistan in the same way they did in Ukraine. And what's the interesting thing, why could they do it so easily? Tajiks and Uzbeks in Afghanistan, and the small children were transferred to Uzbekistan and Tajikistan of the Soviet Union. Easy, the same language. And Ukraine the same. They pick up the kids and they move to Russia and they teach them in Russian because the kids more or less know the Russian. It's easy. So I think this is what we have to put in our minds, acting in the same way. Why they withdraw, nobody knows. But now it's my challenging part, US reaction. At the beginning, the US understood that the Afghanistan and the Russian invading in Afghanistan is a big problem, a big threat. But the Americans didn't want to show that. They were trying to assist the mujahideen in a way that's half secret, with less deadly weapons, and stingers came only later when they understood that it's hesitation, too much, let's say, delay. We want to give them opportunity, but we are giving them in small portions, not to escalate the conflict. I'd say again one example, and the same is relevant with Ukraine, by the way. The principles, to my mind, have been kept the same way. The approach has been kept the same way. Then we have to ask the questions. Do we want to do it the same way? And 4 American presidents, trillions of dollars, thousands of casualties to replace Taliban with Taliban. That's a joke. Very pretty popular joke. But in Ukraine, the stakes are much higher because nobody could remove any assistance from Ukraine. Then we come to the big disaster. Because Russia today is absolutely different from the Russia in the Soviet Union. And Europe cannot solve all their security problems without dealing with the Russian problem. We can't do that, and we can't do that without cooperation with Americans. Every time when we lose the transatlantic ties, both sides, America and Europe, get problems, and very soon. So we have to keep our understanding on a very, very keen, straightforward, without wishful thinking, analysis and facts, and comparisons of the lessons learned in the history. That's about the 3 comparisons. Isn't enough, I think,
Thank you. I actually think that this gives us a wonderful structure for our discussion. I am, while tempted, I am going to actually open it up to you all first. But I'm warning you, if you don't have questions, I'll just go there, okay? So anybody? Yeah, yeah, I thought so. Okay, Jill.
Oh, hi. Jill Doherty. I'm here.
Microphone, or our 200-plus people online won't hear you.
Sorry. Jill Doherty. I'm here at the Wilson Center as a fellow and also at Georgetown University. And thank you very much. Really, really interesting opening comments. President Zatlers, I wanted to ask you, I followed everything that you said, but I just wanted to drill down on one part of it. You said that the goals in Afghanistan and Ukraine were the same, if I understood, right? But that raises a question to me, supposedly peaceful Soviet Union and not so peaceful Russia, why would they have similar goals? And then you seem to indicate that they were economic goals. And in Ukraine, it feels a lot more than economic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The goals were robbery, in one word. Very simple word, which is relevant from centuries to centuries. You see, one more difference. In the Soviet Union, the ruling body and the decision-making body was Politburo, about 16 communist leaders discussing in one table, and deciding what to do. At least discussion. Today, there's no discussion. There's no discussion. There's one person, or let's say somebody advises him, but it's one person's decision. It's dangerous. I really didn't understood the Afghan goals, but it was, to spread communists over the world, and that was a mistake, And even they were replacing one communist leader in Afghanistan by another. Every next was worse. So this is a communist approach. It's absolutely different. I can't call it peaceful because it wasn't peaceful. I agree with you. There's, let's say, I'm not so consequent on that because the main goal was robbery. Economic goals, nothing else. Spheres of influence, And nothing has changed since the Second World War, and they wanted, to get control over the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, The aims were the same, They tried to get the Indian Ocean, They were much more less visible than it is today. Today it's so visible, and they don't care about that. They want to be somewhere in the background. No, they are going forward. We will do that, and that's a big difference. I answered your question.
I'm sorry?
I answered your question?
Yes, thank you.
Good. More or less. Good.
All right. I have a lineup here, okay? So I'm going to go next to Christian Forstner from Hans Seidel Stiftung. Don't worry, y'all, on this line. I have clocked several of you, okay?
Thank you, Mr. President. Christian Forstner, Hans Seidel Foundation. Okay. Do it again. Christian Forstner, Hans Seidel Foundation, based here in DC. I want to ask you, Mr. President, about your understanding of the Russian society, because you said, well, I mean, you followed news. So in Germany, we often have this understanding of a Russian soil, Russkaya dusha. So the people are different, yeah, even if the leadership is very bad. So what can you say about your understanding of Russia's society? Are they really so much in sync with the President Putin? Do they follow this militarist approach in foreign policy, or are they just retreating? Internal, well, asylum, and so your view on the Russian society. Thank you.
Good. It's a very difficult question, by the way. Let's say Russians who left Russia are like the white emigration after the socialist revolution. They talk a lot, but they will not do too much. And they cannot influence the situation in Russia inside. They can't do that. They talk a lot, they are very polite, they are very nice, still they are, what's called, with an imperial approach of great Russia and great Russian culture. Okay, let's put it aside. But inside Russia, last time I was in Russia was 2015 or 16. I was presenting my memoirs, which were written in Russian, and I tried to get some clue what's going on. You can't get clue from lectures, from nice people. You get clue from taxi drivers, people on the streets you meet, and they like it, And I started talking to them very politely about what's going on, and so, to my surprise, I found out there's a 1/3 who get profit from this. There's a 1/3 who don't get profit but say, okay, let's survive. And there's 1/3 who don't care at all. And this is very characteristic. I talked to one Austrian lawyer who works with the Russian oligarchs. And he said he's surprised that these oligarchs, or this Russian political and economic elite, don't care about the people at all. Zero. It's not like more or less elections are coming. No, they don't care. They care a lot. And even in a legal, from the legal aspect, when people say the rule of law is very important, I said, yes, there's no rule of law in Russia. I said, no, there is a rule of law in Russia, but the laws are very specific ones. That's a difference. They use the legal system, for fostering the political system, and that's all. And you can't do. And why I'm telling about all these impressions in one day? Because the next day I was traveling to Kiev. Next day, I just spent overnight at home, and next morning I went to Kiev. Did the same thing, taxi drivers, waiters, whatever people I meet. And I felt civic society. They all were responsible. They disagreed on many questions, but they felt responsible what's going on in Ukraine. And that's a shocking difference. It's a shocking difference. And in some of discussions like this, there are some people who say, we have to work with Russian civil society. I say, civil guys, that's nice. It's a nice idea, but there's no civil society. You have nothing. We have nice ideas, wishful thinking. We think that they are like we. They are not like we. It's nothing to do with the Russian soul. It's because of, let's say, the ideology which is promoted through the mass media. Absolutely controlled. They can switch overnight from black to white and back with no problems. I don't think we can influence this process from outside. What could be the triggering factors? there is a one only triggering factor. You know, I don't know. I sent you the portrait of Russia, Putin, which I wrote 10 years ago, and all the time I am afraid, is it right or not? You know, more or less it's right, even today. Russians don't like losers. If you want to make some change in Russia, you have to make, anyhow, Putin to become a loser. Or make something very painful steps. What are painful steps? There's no answer on this question.
So, we will. I think we should post that to our link on the site, and we'll do that. We have a whole plethora of people on this side that I am going to turn to. So, first I'm going to take Christoph von Marschall, but don't worry, y'all. I have clocked several of you on this, so I'm going to start with Christoph, and then I'm coming back to y'all. So don't sweat it, okay?
Christoph von Marschall. I'm at the moment the Global Europe Fellow here at Wilson Center. In my normal life, I'm a journalist in Berlin, in Germany, so from Germany. If I may, two questions. The first one is a follow-up on make Vladimir Putin a loser. I mean, if this is now a war of attrition, and normally a war of attrition is won by the party which has a bigger resources and is more willing to go all the way down. So Europe alone is has a 7 times bigger GDP than Russia. The West together has 15 times bigger GDP. So why are we in the situation in which we are? What do you see missing that Ukraine could be in a better position and Putin becomes a loser? And since I'm a German, I would like to hear your assessment of Germany's role. Is the new Germany up to the task for its responsibility at the eastern flank or not?
Oh, Christoph, you took my question.
Okay, now the German question. I always emphasize that Willy Brandt's Ostpolitik, Eastern politic, was a success story. Right on time, with good results, increasing let's say, the security levels much more than anything else in those times. The problem was, after the unification of Germany, Germany went on with Ostpolitik, and that was a mistake. Because united Germany is absolutely different than divided Germany. Including the Chancellor Merkel, I have met her several times. We have spoken a lot about European-Russian relations. And when she told me, you know, every time I meet Putin, he is lying. And my question was, if he is lying all the time, why are you going on to meet him? Maybe you that must change. Because the problem was all the time that we tried to make these relationships from our point of view. Peaceful Europe, no wars in Europe, we were happy, working on our welfare, you know, no big threats, you know. We didn't, let's say, recognize Russia as a threat, as we do today. And therefore, you know, we failed. We were too peaceful, I'm sorry to say that. That was a very good thing for Europe, but it was not a good thing for European or German-Russian relationship. And I remember there was a period when Russians tried to get access to anti-missile defense systems of NATO. And I was in Moscow that time talking to Medvedev and asked Medvedev, why do you need it? Because he wanted me to lobby that. I said, no, at first tell me, why do you need it? And he said, but it will make our army modernization program cheaper. Yeah, good reason. But since that time until the Ukrainian war, I had a question in my head. It was just an attempt to gain time? Or sincere offer? Today I say no, it wasn't sincere offer. Because they try to provoke, you know. That's security. We need a new security architecture, from Vladivostok to Lisbon. We had NATO. This message means you have to destroy NATO, which would be a dramatic mistake. They try to provoke all the time us. They are attacking us all the time, like a visa-free travel. He also offers, please support visa-free travel. I said, no problem, but please fulfill all the requirements in what Europe needs. And then I was attacked. You promised them, I promised under definite conditions. So they never fulfilled these conditions. There are a lot of, initiatives coming from Russia which are just provocative. Because we can't understand, as Western people, we think that cooperation, doing business together makes peace sustainable. They don't think so. Like even, let's come back to this Ostpolitik. These gas projects, interdependence. Cornerstone for peace in Europe. Yes, until that moment, the one side says, we don't care. And I was asked that question in the beginning of the war, should we stop buying Russian gas, by Germans, by the way? I said, don't think about that. They will stop the deliveries when they want, in one day. They don't care about you. They will not care about your economy or your economic problems. They don't care. And every time you offer them something, as a proposal, they will grab it. But they will not be representative. Let's say the same approach from their side. They will grab it and think, oh, you are weak. We can't be weak in this situation. Okay, many questions.
Yeah.
I answered your question?
Why is Ukraine not in a better position since the West has much more GDP and this is a war of
Because we have peaceful economy. We didn't invest in the military industry. We didn't invest in our armies, We relied on US umbrella all the time. This time is over. We should need, okay, GDP is bigger, but not in the military industry. If you will compare the percentage of what Russia invests in military industry and Europe, big difference, and not in our favor. Not in our favor. The approach is absolutely different. It's really a clash of not civilizations, but let's say, maybe of civilizations. Different thinking, different approach to the deals.
So, I want to ask the woman in black in the middle, you had a question, right? And I clocked that early on. Don't worry, I got you. I'm coming to you, but I'm going to ask you to give your question next, okay?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right? My name is Lilan Stadler. I'm formerly a Swiss Fellow at the Wilson Center, and I'm now based at the Kissinger Center at Johns Hopkins. My question is, you mentioned earlier on the difference between the relatively peaceful ideology of the Soviet Union and the military ideology of current-day Russia. I'm wondering what the goal is of this military ideology, whether you could clarify that a little bit. I'm sure there are many different interpretations of what that could mean. I'm curious what yours is.
When it started, the starting point or turning point was the elections when Putin was nearly not elected. He lost elections in the big cities. And there was a silence for 2-3 months. He didn't know how to keep his power. And then he came out with this xenophobic, patriotic, military might. We are the savers of Christian values, all this stuff. In 3 months, the opposition, the democratic opposition to him, was dead. In 3 months. And since that time, it's 2011, I think, he was just going on. He can't stop. The problem of dictators is they don't have the exit strategy. They are killed, they are jailed, or they go to exile. And therefore, he is not going to stop. There's no sign, that he is going to stop. He has created this society, the social contract with the society, that the war brings, benefits, and the people get more money if their the husband or son is shot in Ukraine. They get money. It's a death ideology, You can't imagine. We don't think in the same way.
So I'm turning now.
I don't think that we really can understand it. I have met with very many Russians, who hate the war, who make mistakes, and there's a very interesting approach from the oligarchs. It was a goddamn thing he did, but today we must win. They're not happy, but there's no end point. And then the question is, what's the victory? What victory we can offer him? I don't know.
So I'm turning next to the gentleman sitting next to Christoph on this side here. Again, y'all, I see there's a whole lineup of y'all, so I'll come to you next. And I've got you over there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Paldies. My name is Carlos. I'm from the University of Maryland and CEPA, the Center for European Policy Analysis. My question was about this window of opportunity that you mentioned, and then you already touched on it a little bit. But do you think that Medvedev's foreign policy was different than Putin's? And could you speak more about this period of time under Medvedev and the relations there, and what changed?
There's no difference in the foreign policy between Medvedev and Putin. Medvedev was prepared by Putin, again, to better prepare for the next clash with the Western world. And I think Medvedev sometimes was sincere, especially I saw his speech in one of the universities in the United States. He said, I'm so happy, I never imagined I could talk to the American students, Now he's... Many people ask me, when you talk to him, was it the same way? I said, no, he wasn't the same way, but he's acting as he's acting. And why he's acting so? I said, no, because there's no other choice for him. There's no other choice for him, He can't be Democrat. He cannot be, a man who provides science and so. No, there's no room for him anymore. The only thing what he can do is just to drink vodka and to make statements,
Okay, there's a statement in itself. So I'm taking a question here, then, wait for it, so everybody's braced. I'm going to go to this side in case people think that, there's some sort of prejudice going on here. So you, sir, and then we're coming back to you, sir.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Sjogren from Northwestern University, and I'm very curious about your country, Latvia, and how do you perceive the threat, if any, from Russia to you, and how do the other people in your country feel about that?
You see, again, a little bit about history. In 2007, when I was elected, there were no military infrastructure in Latvia. We were preparing our army for international missions, not for territorial defense at that time. The border was so peaceful, I could walk to the borderline, say hello to the Russian border guards, and go back, And usually I compared it with the border of Soviet Union and Poland in the Soviet times, which was massively fortified between two Warsaw Pact countries. That's a lot of paradoxes in that. Today, after the Georgian War, we got the contingency planning, at least planning how to defend the Baltic states. After Crimea, we have a real NATO presence, which is increasing all the time. And it works. It works. At first, there was a little bit concerns about how the Russian population, we have 26% of Russian population. 26% of Latvians are Russian origin. At first, they said, NATO, we become a target. Today, they don't care about the army moving around and the jets flying over the cities, They get used to that because this is peace. This is peace. Yeah? Of course, the question is, do you have the, let's say, Putin sentiments, pro-Putin sentiments? Of course we have. About 10% of those are Putinists, real Putinists. In the open, let's say, opinion polls, this number is not changing, 10%. The good thing is they can say it openly. In a democratic world, they can say it openly. Then about, let's say, the population who is sometimes called Russian-speaking population. It's much more complicated because we have Russians with Latvian passports, we have Russians with Russian passports, we have Ukrainians with, speaking Russian with Ukrainian passports, and we have Ukrainians, which are Russians by origin, with Ukrainian passports. So 4 groups, at least. Russian-speaking 4 groups. How to get the stability, discipline. At the beginning of the war, there was a lot of Ukrainian language on the streets. Today, we don't hear it. It's adaptation. They all speak Russian, not to make any conflict. And they are so different, with so different opinions about this war, that they don't make any public statements or demonstrations or whatever. They don't express their attitudes publicly. Is it good or bad for stability in society? It's very good. And I call it discipline. They understand that if they do something wrong, the clash may start and we will get a war there. That's an understanding.
So,
How long it will go, I don't know. At present, we managed it already for 2.5 years.
so thank you. I saw that.
You just answered my question.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Thank you very much indeed. Then we're back to the robust discussion on this side. So, sir in the blue jacket, I'll take you first and then come up.
My name is Sergei Zhuk. I'm from Baltic State Investor Region from Dnipro, Ukraine, and fellow here at Wilson Center. Thank you much from my generation of Chernobyl veterans, because you worked there and I spent 3 months in Chernobyl as a member of this reserved force from Ukraine. And I have 2 questions. You try to compare the events of this open war against Ukraine with Afghanistan. Many specialists compare this with Prague Spring, with Czechoslovakia events of 1968. What is more appropriate? That's my first question. And the second question, because I'm writing a book about how KGB and Russian intelligence influenced West academia in pro-Russian direction. And I work with KGB archives documents, and I realized that before collapse of the Soviet Union, KGB and GRU, its military intelligence agency, tried to use pro-Russian people, including Russian immigration, in the United States and Canada, provoking, and again, it's before collapse, when it was peaceful and controlled confrontation. But now we know that FSB and other agencies, intelligence services in Russia try to use so-called fifth column in former Soviet bloc, especially in Latvia, you mentioned already. We know what happened recently in Estonia when Professor Morozov was arrested. What do you know how Latvian intelligence worked against this attempt to use pro-Russian elements? Anti-Ukraine, you already mentioned, I don't like this comment when Ukrainians began speaking Russian on the streets of Riga.
Yeah, but it's reality.
Yeah, but it's true. So my question, the most important question for me, what will Latvian administration do to suppress this Russian, anti-Ukrainian, anti-Western fifth column?
You see, we have declared from the first day that any attempt to support Russian invasion will be punished. Any use of Russian flag is punished. At the same time, there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of Ukrainian flags everywhere. You will not see in any other place such a big number of Ukrainian flags. Also, the question is why? Just to show on which side we are. For the local, do we have, as I said, we have these pro-Russian, activists. They're punished immediately. And the question about the secret services, if you don't see too much accidents, that means the secret services work well. Very simple. This is a question that when I'm asked in my country, in Latvia, I said, if you don't feel, that means they work well. You have to do a lot of job because let's say, to keep this very complex, our Latvian society is very complex. To keep it in a stability, in a prosperous way, you need cohabitation and no extremes. We will not have any extremes. All extremes are immediately cut. A group of 2-3 people is immediately cut. So about Prague. Czechoslovakia, 2068, I remember it very well. Many Czechs don't remember that so well as I do, because I was, a hockey fan, and the hockey was one of the expressions of Czechs, strong will. That was a special operation, as Putin calls. That was not a war. That was a special operation, taking over Czechoslovakia in a few days. And Putin thought that he will do that the same way in Ukraine. But it turned out that the operation failed, and instead of that, we have war. This is a different story. Ideologically, yes, but basically, this is a war for resources. In Prague, in Czechoslovakia, it was not a war for resources, it was ideology.
Thank you very much. So now's your chance.
Thank you for the word. My name is Tomáš Koreň. I am interning here with the Czech Embassy, and I just do have to appreciate both of the lovely gentlemen for these historical comparisons and for talking about Prague in what is a very relevant example today. I would like to ask, and I think this is, I think about this a lot. You talked a lot about Russian society. At the same time, you said that it is not likely that Russian society is going to change in the immediate future because of the reasons that you mentioned, and I do agree with you on that. I'm then wondering whether we should be talking about Russia and about Russians as much as I think we do today. I understand that on one hand, we need, for countries that do not have the same experience that Latvians, Czechs, or Ukrainians have, to understand the threat and to understand the unfeasibility of cooperation in the current time. At the same time, I'm wondering whether our fixation on Russia actually stops us from being able to take initiative and not to overemphasize Russian opinions and Russian positions in a time where they shouldn't be taken into as much consideration. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. We did it up to now, up to the 2022. We thought that there's necessary to have a special approach, special, polite approach. Let's not tease them. Let's not, It didn't work. I don't think it's today. And I wrote an article a couple of days ago about the future of European Union, and I said the future of European Union is not in Russian-Ukrainian war. It's inside the European Union itself. Is it European Union able to improve their military performance, military industry, what I call synchronization, to get all the countries of European Union into Euro currency zone? Are we ready for reforms? Are we ready for enlargement? We had to do all these things right now. But still, we are much more talking than doing. And always that's fatigue. Enlargement fatigue, what's that? I don't know that. If you want to achieve your goals, there's no room for fatigue. Place your goals and create a plan how to achieve them. But war on your border matters a lot. And I had a conversation with people from Africa. I said, you know, much more people were killed in the African Corn. And I said, yeah, that's fine. I understand. And no attention from the world. I said, you know, that's not fine. Yeah, but you have to understand that in this case, Russian attack in Ukraine, the neighbors care about that. The neighbors don't want to be a war, you know. And if Europeans say after the Second World War, never again. And what the Russians say, we can make it again. And publicly they do that. And the neighbors of the African Corn conflict countries, they are not so, you know, let's say, caring about what's going on. That's a big difference. The attitude matters a lot. One more thing about Crimea. I met one American, let's say one American, and he said, no, Khrushchev, you know, made the Ukraine a gift. Crimea. He was a little bit drunk, and he said, that's a fairy tale. It's an absolute fairy tale because it was absolutely, you know, economic decision. Because to govern and to, let's say, make all the economic development from Ukrainian side was much easier than from the Russian side. The Russians built the bridge because they understood that. They knew that. It's a fairy tale, but these fairy tales are around. So now you know, that was a very practical decision.
They also gave it away 10 years after cleansing the local population. They don't talk so much about that.
So I'm opening it up to questions. Thank God, somebody on this side to, you know, bring you a little further along. So,
thank you for allowing me to ask a question. My name is Artem Gergun. I'm from Ukraine, Kennan Institute here, research scholar. I wonder, what is your view on Belarus? Because you have a border with Belarus, and what's your view on the participation of Belarus in this war, and is there any chance for pro-democratic, pro-European Belarus in the future? Thank you very much.
Belarus is a special case. It's really a special case. We have a direct border, you know. Now we have for 2 or 3 years the migrant crisis, you know. Illegal migrants supported by the Belarusian border guards, you know, equipped with Belarusian techniques, you know, try to cross the Latvian border. From economic point, it was about 1.6% of GDP because of trade with Belarus. Belarus for us was a very, very important partner. After these presidential elections, it's going down, going down, going down. Economically, the relations are going down. I have met Lukashenko and had a lunch with him. He's a very special man, you know. He tried to convince me that we Latvians must go with Russia and that Europe doesn't need us. All this stupid stuff, you know. Basically, he's very clever. And when I told him once when I met them in an unofficial place, you know, there was he and Putin and somebody else. There were European sports games in a VIP zone. And I told him, you know, you are much cleverer than Putin. And you know what his answer was? I know it. So we are dealing with a person who really, if you have followed him, he is ruling, Putin is ruling his country as a KGB officer. He sees the whole country as a KGB operation. Then Lukashenko is governing his country as a big collective farm. This is his philosophy, you know, and he's not going to change. The problem is that if he is replaced, Russia will take over. Creeping takeover of Belarus and adding these territories to Russia. It's already happening, you know, because let's say there are a lot of Russian officers in secret services, in army, in police, and you cannot distinguish who is who. And in such a creeping way, they will take over all this country, which is an interesting thing. I read a book about Ukraine, written by one person from intelligence service, from Latvian intelligence service. And when I saw these numbers that about 70% of all these internal power structures like police, prosecution office, prosecutor's office, intelligent organizations infiltrated with Russian agents, I said, wow, what will happen? But when the war started, it turned out, is it fake or do they change their mind? And the next question, are they still there on the Russian service? We don't know. It's very complicated.
Chernobyl pushed many of these. Chernobyl tragedy pushed many of these officers in anti-Kremlin direction. Mm-hmm. They now work with SBU, but these veterans, they hate Kremlin. They hate Putin because of 1986. You need to remember this.
If we compare all these situations, Latvia, Ukraine, Belarus, all are unpredictable, by the way. How the people will act depend what's going on an open stage, in a battlefield, you know, in a global political field, you know, because you never know what's in the people's mind. You can't get this information.
We have time for one more question, and I'm going to get, sorry, I've got it in the middle. Sorry about this, but maybe afterwards, right? Because we're online for 1 hour. So, sir, it's down to you. Yes?
William Bellis, formerly of the State Department. Quick question for you, Mr. President. You talked a little about Belarus. Asked a question about your neighbors, Estonia and Lithuania, and to what extent you are cooperating, coordinating with them. Is there a Baltic bloc within European Union, NATO?
Yes, politically we cooperate not only on the Baltic level, but what's called Baltic Nordic level. Because before all the important decisions made in European Union, we consult each other before. That's already a practice for many years. As a military cooperation, okay, we have Baltic Defense College in Estonia. That's the only good example. Starting that since the war started in Ukraine, you know, our military cooperation is going up. Not only in between Baltic states, but in Baltic Nordic states, but on NATO generally, you know. Because we become, you know, a collective defense organization, not only on the paper, but in a practical life. So it is going on on everyday basis.
So I'm going to actually take the privilege to ask you, is there a message that you would give to leaders gathering at UNGA's high-level week this week?
I never give suggestions to high leaders.
Why do I doubt that?
Yeah, but basically we must send some messages. Because not only understanding of intelligence services like CIA, you know, it's not enough to understand, let's say, situation in Europe and in Ukrainian-Russian war by the eyes of CIA. It's very important by the eyes of politicians, American politicians, to have full information, full understanding, and not only wishful, let's say it's far away, I don't care, yeah. And it's very important to have this moral much more in a public, you know, information media. That's very important. But I understand that we are going to the end, yes?
Yes.
I just want to make one comment about nuclear threats based on my Chernobyl experience, you know. You see, people all over the world, when somebody tells nuclear threat, there are two images, Hiroshima and the nuclear test in Pacific. There are definite images which we associate with nuclear attack. At the same time, it's not so easy, you know. Being in Chernobyl, in the first phase, just after the accident, we understood that all the rules we learned in military lessons don't work. And my usual statement was the Soviet Union was prepared for the nuclear war, but was not prepared for the accident in a peaceful nuclear power plant. That means, you know, we speak about the nuclear warheads, the attacks on the cities, and strategic missiles delivering all these nuclear warheads. But when we talk about using nuclear tactical, it's a nice word, tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, there's no sense to use them. Because if you want to invade this territory, no army is prepared for that, Russian army especially. Because you contaminate this territory. And it's not so easy to decontaminate to such a level that your troops may go in. Very simple situation. You know. You have to prepare their troops at first that they will move in this contaminated area, what to do with this contaminated area. There's no sense, no military sense to use tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. There are only two sites, and they're sometimes around. The first site is Chernobyl. I don't know, is it makes sense because it's already contaminated? And the second is Crimea, by the way. Russians have such a saying, if you don't have it, you will not have it too. Yeah, then it means, you know, at the end of the war, they just contaminated area forever for 300 years. And how expensive it is to decontaminate it is. It's not so easy, you know, because you have to really dig in all this stuff you call cars, tanks, and all the things. Because all they are dangerous for you, for the soldiers' lives. And therefore, they are not prepared. Maybe they are prepared for attack on New York, I don't know, you know, but then you have good facilities for interception that.
So, President Zatlers, I want to thank you. That is a very somber note to leave us with, but I thank you for giving us your insight into this. As I said, we will post the excerpt from your book on your discussions with Putin on the event website. Thank you for our audience because you participated in exactly the vibrant way that I hoped you would. Thank you also to our online listeners for participating as well. And again, we hope to see you at another event here at the Wilson Center. Thank you.
Thank you.